welcome back to my YouTube channel. Wow, it's been like forever. Anyway, I'm home on winter break, and so I'm finally doing a bookshelf tour. So first I'm gonna do a breakdown of how it's organized, and I might end up doing a voiceover for the actual tour. I don't really know, we'll see. So we're here, and we're gonna get close-ups, don't worry. So these are all of my James Baldwin. It's separated by this James Baldwin like prayer candle that the English faculty at my high school got me because I won like the English award or something when I was a senior, which was great. And then we go into my David Wojnarowicz collection for the most part. I'm missing a book here because, well, Close to the Knives, I always take back to my dorm, so I didn't want that on the shelf. And then the Waterfront journals are currently in my dorm. So I don't have all of those, so I'm gonna have to maybe change this shelf around a little bit when it's the summertime because this shelf is like very full, but we'll see what we can do. Okay, and then we get into my like queer fiction. So those are in alphabetical order by author's last name. This is the worst book I've ever read in my life. The City and the Pillar by Gore Vidal. I'm just not a Gore Vidal guy. I don't like his writing style. But what is a great book that came out around the same time is Other Voices of the Rooms by Truman Capote. That's also kind of like a queer coming of age story, but it's a little more subdued in its like explicitness of queer desire. I guess this one is. But his writing is just so bland, I just couldn't get into it. Sorry, Gore Vidal. Anyway, so those end here with our lovely edition of Nocturnes for the King of Naples by Edmund White. I want to show this off just because I like it. I think throughout the video, I'm going to show off a few things that I really enjoy. Because I'm not trying to do like a here's every book I own, but I'll like talk more in depth about favorites. This I got last spring or something. And it's a McKinley edition. And I love this drawing. And yeah, it's just really nice. I like the pages. I like the font. This book was pretty good. Nothing like life-changing for me, but it was good. And then we move on to my set of Toni Morrison novels. I'm missing Jazz right now because I lent that to my sister, but we have them all in order of publication. These are probably my least favorite editions of Toni Morrison books. I mean, they look nice. Sorry, the shadow is really pissing me off. We're gonna move that over. They look really nice, but I don't know. I would prefer them with other covers, but I took a Toni Morrison class last like spring term, which is why I have all of these. And then I have two authors whose last name are both Smith. I have The Stone Face by William Gardner Smith and White Teeth by Zadie Smith. Then I have my very, very small James Joyce collection. I have A Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man, which was one of my favorite reads of the summer. It was just so good. I really love Joyce. And then I have the Centennial edition of Double Inners. This is a used book, and they put two big fat used stickers over some of the drawings, but each of these drawings corresponds with a different story. And my favorite story in this book, or this collection, is The Sisters. I think it's the first one in here, actually. This does have the, what's this called? Deckled edge paper, which I hate. But we read this in my senior year of AP Lit. Not all of them, but just a few. So I was annotating in pencil, so that's awesome. But he can really pack a lot in just like, literally like 5 pages of a story. I love this, just like, guys. And then I have my Faulkner collection, so I guess this is kind of like my modernism section of fiction. I have As I Lay Dying, which I've read, and then The Sound and the Fury, which I got from my grandma. She was getting rid of some books, and I haven't read The Sound and the Fury yet. I did start reading Sanctuary last year, actually, and I got like 100 pages in, and then I didn't have time to finish it. Over here, I have my smaller paperbacks. A lot of these books I've also gotten from my grandma, and I read like a while ago, but then I have like, I've never read The Metamorphosis, which I would need to read. But I have my two J.D. Salinger, so Raise High the Roof Beam Carpenters and Seymour, an Introduction, and The Catcher in the Rye, which, not to sound like an incel, I love The Catcher in the Rye. Then we have just more fiction. This isn't alphabetized at all. This I haven't read. I have a Kurt Vonnegut collection I haven't read. And then I have books that are like things that I read in high school, or that were taught in the curriculum. So like The Outsiders, Great Gatsby, 1984, which they had phased this out of the curriculum by the time I got there, and I never read it, but it's just my sister's copy. Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse, which I actually really liked. And then just some random, more like contemporary fiction, I guess, which there's literally 2 books here, so I don't know why I call it this contemporary fiction. This book I finished before I came home. It's Big Babies by Sherwood Kerali. And right here I actually have the book I'm going to read next, which is Diminished Capacity by Sherwood Kerali. Sherwood Kerali is my writing professor. He's written 4 novels, and these 2 seemed the most interesting plot-wise to me. So Big Babies was really funny. It was one of these books that I would never have like chosen to read if I didn't know Sherwood, but it was actually really good. Then I have French literature. I have my copy of L'Étranger by Albert Camus that I got when I went to France. I got it at an FNAC in Brest. I have one of my favorite books that I've read, maybe ever, Les Enfants Terribles by Jean Cocteau. This is in French. I wanted to, because I'm not taking any more French classes in college, and so I wanted to challenge myself and read a novel in French. Okay, moving on to the second shelf. This is where we have poetry, plays, memoirs, the nonfiction, and then literary journals, and that's kind of the bulk of what's on this shelf. I do have my beautiful fish. I don't know if this is a Tiffany lamp, but I see these all over the internet. And my friend found this for me at a thrift store for $10, which is crazy. And it like works and everything. I don't have too much poetry, actually, which is kind of sad, but I do have, this is cool to me. I didn't even know my family had this, but it's Nikki Giovanni, who recently passed away, I think maybe about a year ago. Oh, it was a gift from my dad to his mom for Mother's Day. And then Nikki Giovanni actually signed it. And 10 years later, my grandma wrote a little thing that said, like a note in response to the message that my dad wrote in the book. And then I guess my grandma re-gifted this to my dad, which is super sweet. We have plays, which there's only a few. I have like 2 Shakespeare's in here, and then like a modern theater guide to Angels in America. And then we get on to memoirs. So I have Just Kids by Patti Smith, Memoirs of a Bastard Angel by Harold Norse, which was a really interesting read if you are interested in like the kind of New York 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, like literary circles. This guy, Harold Norris, was a gay poet, and he just like knew a ton of people. And this is just really interesting because it kind of feels like you are just like hearing a bunch of gossip from somebody. And then I have We Both Laughed in Pleasure, the Selected Diaries of Lou Sullivan, who was a trans man born actually in the same area of Milwaukee that I grew up in. And he moved to San Francisco later. He was one of the first, or really the first openly gay trans man. And his diaries are a really interesting look about, you know, coming out and transitioning and what that means and how to navigate that when you don't really have any like community or people to look to. And then I have It Was Vulgar, It Was Beautiful by Jack Lowry. This is about a subset of ACT UP called, I'm like blanking on, I wrote a paper about this. I'm blanking on like what the collective was called, but this art collective, Grand Fury, and how they use art to kind of fight back against the like neglect of the AIDS crisis in the US. And then I have Post-Colonial Paris, which I've talked about before. And then these 3 books I actually haven't read. This is Mythology, The Voyage of the Hero by David Lemming. He's the one who wrote James Baldwin biography. I have a book of Foucault. What's the Foucault Reader? My dad gave this to me, and I need to read it because I read a little bit of the Panopticon for my paper. Oh yeah, my paper about surveillance culture and specifically queer surveillance during the Cold War in the U.S. I was looking at Langston Hughes and Allen Ginsberg's supermarket in California and Langston Hughes cafe at 3 a.m. and how they deal with the surveillance culture and kind of they're critiquing it. The critique within, I think, is what the paper was called. Down here I have my copy of Dear Jean-Pierre, and then over here I have the literary magazines. I have one from Macalester College, and then the other ones are from my college. I have my copy of Bushfires in the Social Landscape it's like a look at David Wojnarowicz's work. And then I have my James Baldwin Reading from Giovanni's Room record that I got for $15. I'm probably going to do a record collection video at some point, and I'll talk more about this, but I wanted this on the bookshelf because he's reading from Giovanni's Room. And then I have something very cool. This is my Giovanni's Room replica that my friend Johnny made for me for my birthday a few years ago, so shout out Johnny. So moving on to the third shelf, I have a bunch of children's books that I just want to keep a hold on, and then we go into books about music, which is kind of fun. I have my Polaroid camera, which has no film in it right now. And this is very cool. This is 10 Imaginary Years, which is a kind of rare to find now official breakdown of The Cure. I got this used off eBay. It smells really weird. And they included this lovely photo of Robert Smith in there. But this was really cool to me. Has a bunch of pictures. Tells you about The Cure. Goes through all their eras up until I think 86. Finally, I have anthologies. So I have an anthology of short stories. And then I have my Norton Anthology of American Literature, 10th edition anthology. So this goes from beginnings to the present. This is just my YA. I have John Green and the Hunger Games and things like that. And then I have all of my vintage, well, not vintage, some of these are vintage, all of my cameras. I hope you guys enjoyed. This is going to be a pain to edit because I've been talking for so long, but yeah, I'm very excited about my bookshelf, and hopefully I can make a couple more videos before I go back to school. Definitely I'll try to do a record collection, and then, I don't know, maybe some vlogs, maybe some book reviews and whatnot. I'll probably do my favorite books of the year for sure. So yeah, thank you for watching. Hashtag good to be back on YouTube. Bye.